Hi, this is Alana Murphy. I am doing my Module 2 assignment titled The Brain and Dyslexia for the SPED 5023 class, and I found this very timely. I just had a transfer student start last week. He is a foster child and has been to several schools over the past 2 years, and the caseworker said, oh yeah, when I was talking about how low his scores were for reading, the last 2 schools had mentioned that he might have dyslexia, but he's never really been tested. And so when I read this assignment, I knew that I needed to already professionally be researching more about dyslexia to know about the warning signs and how to help this caseworker get a diagnosis and get the student extra services that maybe we couldn't do during school. And so I was really thankful for this opportunity to do this research as a part of my program. I'm gonna share my screen into Prezi. This is something new for me. I've never done a Prezi before. I've watched them and I was really interested in how it's animated and kind of fun. There was lots of templates, so that's something new that I tried for this week. So if I have some difficulty, know that it's a new platform for me, but I'm excited to use it. So the brain and dyslexia. I chose this picture because what they're finding in research and MRIs are that the neurotypical brain is a lot more set up and organized than the dyslexic brain. And so the patterns and the synapses and the neural pathways that are typical are not found in the dyslexic brain. So I wanted to do something that was maybe a little different than a typical image of a brain. A lot of kids and adults with dyslexia, they're very bright, intelligent people. If you think about it, they spend their whole life coping, if they're not diagnosed, with persevering and being aware of their surroundings and getting by on life, even though they can't read as well as their peers. And they navigate life with that challenge. And it's really kind of cool how successful and creative some people are, and then probably they have an aha moment when they find out they do have dyslexia, and that's why they've struggled with reading. All right. I am struggling with what area I'm supposed to be picking, but that is what happens when you use the new program. All right, the brain. The neurotypical brain, when children with typical brains begin exposure to reading, their brain naturally starts connecting what's written to what's spoken, and multiple areas of the brain activate as they progress through the stages of reading. Pictorial, phonological, and orthographical. Their brain makes those connections with a little bit of assistance on what something on the page written means versus what is spoken and they hear. As those pathways are used, they're strengthened and children begin to read more fluently as their brain connects the dots, if you will, to what they are seeing. In a dyslexic brain, Dr. Barton shares that there are 5 points that you need to know about the dyslexic brain. The first, that it's an inherited condition. So there are some dyslexics or people with dyslexia that they have it because someone in their family tree had it. She said that there's a 50% chance of having dyslexia if you have it in your family tree. 20% of children have dyslexia somewhere on the range from mild to severe. And so there's a lot of people in the world, like I mentioned earlier, adults who have navigated life that didn't realize that they have dyslexia, and that's why certain things are challenging to them. Number 2, she shares that it's due to structural brain difference. So it's not just that they're behind or slow, it's that their brains are literally structured different. MRIs are showing that the right hemisphere of their brain is up to 10% larger, and then there's less gray matter or tissue folds in their left hemisphere. So it is partly due to kind of like an imbalance between the 2 lobes that you would naturally see in typically developing brains. The other thing is they have researched and found that people with dyslexia process language differently. So the band or the pathway between the Broca's and the Wernicke's area, they're linked differently for people with dyslexia. It's not a smooth pathway like it is for non-dyslexic learners. People with dyslexia struggle with directionality. It's not that they reverse B and D, it's that they struggle to see the difference between B and D and P. If it's left, right, up or down, they struggle with the directionality of knowing what is their left and their right for self-awareness. They don't understand easily north, south, east, west, giving directions, or even directionality in time, before and after, yesterday, today. And then number 5 kind of goes with that, memory. Difficulty memorizing sequences, so the days of the week or the months of the year, having their ABCs in order, and being able to recall rote random facts. So multiplication tables, state capitals, those kind of things are a struggle to the dyslexic brain. Warning signs that maybe we see in the classroom: struggle with spelling. They're a slower reader who has a difficult time sounding out unknown words, so words in isolation. Even if we try to have them memorize sight words, it's a struggle. And then they have difficulty writing or getting their thoughts down in acceptable form. They can verbally tell you, they're very creative, we hear their stories well, but whenever they sit down and they have to scribe what's going on in their brains, they find that very difficult. This is a picture that I found, the typical brain and the dyslexic brain. When a student is reading with the typical brain, there are 3 areas of the brain lighting up. Whenever a student with dyslexia is reading, the Broca's area is lighting up, and then a lot of times those surges out don't go anywhere like they should. It should be following those pathways to activate different areas of the brain to recognize the word, to analyze what it is, and then to form it in a way that they understand. Effects in the classroom. In preschool, they might have delayed speech, mix-up sounds and syllables, stuttering, difficulty tying shoes. They might not have a dominant hand, trouble memorizing things, can't create words that rhyme, or they have a close relative with dyslexia. So these are all some of those red flag signs that aren't necessarily reading, but they all have to do with the pathway between the sections of the brain and how those pathways don't connect in the same way a child with dyslexia. So if you think about tying your shoes, you're having to use bilateral movement. You're tying together using both hands at the same time. Whenever they get older into school, in elementary school, they could have dysgraphia, slower handwriting or difficulty reading what they've written, letter or number reversals, again, talking about that directionality. They might guess what a word is if they recognize the first and the last letter. And you're like, how did they get, I can't even think of an example right now, but how did they get house out of home, which those are synonyms, but it's because they see the first and the last letter and then they try to guess and make up the middle part until they get it correctly. A lot of times they do a lot of word association, and so when they're speaking and they're trying to think of what one word is, they might describe everything around that word but not be able to get what they're really trying to say vocabulary-wise to you. A lot of students with dyslexia might eventually begin to dread school because it's so hard, and they might complain of stomach aches or headaches, do anything they can to get out of coming to school, or maybe have nightmares about school. Implications for teachers. I think it is imperative that we look beyond the symptoms or the test scores and really look at what our students need and what the cause of those scores are. So moving beyond sound it out. Like if we're walking in classroom, people are struggling with sight words or spelling tests, a lot of times we'll be, well, just spell it out, buddy. But that's really hard for a kid with dyslexia who doesn't understand the basics of speech and words and language. And so they're not going to be able to sound it out unless they've been explicitly taught what to sound out, because they're not even aware of what they're supposed to be doing. We need to examine work samples to look for patterns. Is it just something that has a couple words they're confusing, or a letter that they're confusing, or is it something that is global throughout all their writing? Is it W and M and U and N and B and D and P and Q? Is it different words that they're writing forwards and backwards, looking in math and in writing? We also need to consider cultural or social causes when we're looking at maybe low reading scores. Are they a part of an ethnic group that research has shown maybe has a later maturation of reading. Can we do anything about that? If it's maybe a high poverty situation, can we send more books home? Can we have parent nights where we come in and read together? Those kind of things. For a student that we think it is due to dyslexia, we have to go back and begin at the basics. They might be a second or third grader, but we need to start at pre-K and kindergarten emergent skills for reading. And progress through the reading stages and keep fidelity with whatever the reading program is that we have. We also need to allow child to have extended time to read and spell. So their brain is not processing the same as non-dyslexic brains. So we have to give them an opportunity to process at their speed and pace. And so that sometimes looks like extended time to read and spell. If I was the caseworker for someone on an IEP that had dyslexia, that would definitely be an accommodation I would want for testing, that they have extended time, especially for writing and reading parts of their exams. Next part is strategies. So research has shown that students with dyslexia need teachers who use explicit, repetitious instruction. And that starts with a basic. Teaching phonemic awareness and then phonological processing before you begin phonics instruction. It's a foundational thing that you build up. Students with dyslexia really need the basic start so that their brain can associate the bits of speech with words broken down into the letters and the sounds. And so if you begin with phonics, you're beginning 2 steps ahead of where they are. So you really have to go back to the very basics. I'm a part of a Facebook group that's the National Special Educators Association, and I Google searched first programs to use for instruction with students of dyslexia, and there was a ton of stuff. So I went to the Facebook group and I just asked, in your experience, which program works best? And so some of these I had put in because I had seen them on multiple sites as instruction evidence-based programs, and then some people added on their own. And so you can see here from that Facebook group which program that special education teachers in the field using these programs actively have to say. Number 1 recommended by far was Orton Gillingham program, and I know a lot of other smaller programs use his principles or their principles as the basis for their instruction, and so that's something I'm definitely going to look into. Wilson Reading Program was number 2, and then all the other ones were kind of hit or miss as far as people recognizing the value of the program or having experience with it and saying they've had students successfully begin to read after they're using these programs for instruction. Resources, there's a lot more online, but I did find 2 really good sites that had a lot of information, both as educators looking at it and as a parent that I could give to a parent for more information about to learn more for themselves about their student. Bright Solutions for Dyslexia and International Dyslexia Association both had a ton of handouts and free videos that could help parents or teachers better understand what dyslexia is and how it is different for their student to experience the classroom and assignments that it would be for a student with a neurotypical brain that doesn't experience the problems dyslexia brings. Last things are my references. Susan Barton, that is one of the resources from that Bright website. Melissa Malway, she had a great blog post about the neuroscience of reading and some really cool illustrations to help show how the brain pathways and matter is different with people with dyslexia. Just my Facebook poll for my special education teacher group, and then the textbook for our class, David Salsa's book, How the Special Needs Brain Learns. So that is all for my Module 2 assignment. I enjoyed learning more about dyslexia and hopefully am able to better serve my current student with dyslexia and future students with dyslexia. Now that I have a little more tools in my tool count, I will be emailing my district SPED director to see if we have any existing curriculum or look into grants to buy curriculum. So I have some evidence-based strategies to use that I can use with Fidelity to help students learn to read that struggle with dyslexia.